Hi everyone, this is REC3 and welcome to today's video. I'm really glad that you all love my win condition tier video, and I think they're fun to make and I'd like to keep doing them. Also, I hope you enjoy this new claw machine overlay that I designed. I think it's pretty nifty. Alright, let's hop right into the main video. I'll be going through tier lists S, which is the best rank, all the way down to tier list D, which is the worst rank, and I'll be using stats from grand challenges and the top 200 to determine what the best tank busters are, and these stats are coming from Royale API. Tank busters are made to deal a high amount of damage to single unit win conditions. They don't necessarily have to be tanks, they can be win conditions such as the Hog Rider, Ram Rider, and etc. I will be including some extra cards on this list, such as, for example, the Night Witch and Sparky. And hey, if you don't consider them to be tank busters, you can just remove them right out of the list. It's better than not adding them on the list and someone missing out. Remember, if there's a card on here that gets in a lower rank that you enjoy and you love, don't worry about it. You may be having a lot of success with that card, and great for you. This is for players who want to try out a new archetype and want to try out things that are best in the current meta. Anyways, let's get started. Mini Pekka, our classic pancake eating robot, is up first. Mini Pekka has always been a solid card, and its high DPS and damage per hit can be used in many situations. Usually you can see in Hog Rider decks, but in other decks, it acts as a really strong tank buster that can really get the job done, and it can fit in most decks. However, strangely, its win rates and its usage rates are pretty low, and that's compared to its brother, the Lumberjack. Although the Lumberjack doesn't have a high amount of DPS, it makes up for it with its fast hit speed and very fast movement speed. And of course, the Bottle of Rage that drops when it's done. Ladder users, are you with me? Plus, the Lumberjack just synergizes very well with the current top win conditions in the game, such as the Golem and the Balloon. Although, in the current meta, it's having some trouble keeping up with the Lumberjack, it is not a bad card. I would still place this card in the A tier, because it gets the job done. Minion Horde. I know a lot of people like to use this card on offense, especially when used with a miner. However, in decks like those, you're usually better off using Minion. However, to be fair, it does work well in Fireball bait decks. And in terms of defense, when that spell is gone, the Minion Horde can just absolutely shred tanks and units in general. I don't know, maybe I have this card all wrong. Anyways, as a tank buster, it can work well in Fireball bait decks, such as with Three Musketeers and Barbarians. However, the prevalence of Baby Dragon, Poison, the newly buffed Princess, Furnace, Fireball, and Giant Snowball give it a lot of problems. So for now, I'm going to place it in the D tier as a tank buster. But I might not include it in the next list, because I'm still a little iffy about it. Inferno Tower. Right now, this card is excellent. It's pretty much a great cleanup option for any solid win condition, and that goes for air troops too. The only real problem that I would face is lightning, but a card that just cleans up so much with just one hard counter is great. Zap can be an inconvenience, but usually you can see Inferno Towers in bait decks, so you know what I'm talking about. I would place this card in the S tier. Inferno Dragon. I think it's a cool concept to have a moving Inferno Tower. However, this card's only good against tanks, and all tanks target buildings or ground units, so Zap actually becomes significant against it. Plus, this card doesn't actually do too well against any other solid win conditions like Hog Riders, Ram Riders, etc. However, the fact that it can burn through even the toughest enemies for 4 elixir, even with the reduced damage, is great. Also, being that it's a troop, it can counter push afterwards, unlike the Inferno Tower, but it's really rare to actually see an Inferno Tower locking on to the enemy Princess Tower. In all honesty, I'd rather spend 1 more elixir to have a building that actually cleans up and pulls all troops and gets the job done in almost all scenarios. So for now, I'll place it in the B tier. Some of the higher tier win conditions, like the Mini Pekka, can also clean up not just tanks, but the other win conditions such as Hog Riders, Ram Riders, and etc. However, if anything changes with that card, I will consider moving it up. Barbarians. Had they not gotten a buff, they would have definitely been in the D tier. However, this buff has given them 2 new benefits. 1. Now that they have lower health and they can be one-shot by Fireball, the temptation for fireballing them is much higher. I'm not saying them getting a health nerf is a good thing, but now it's just a little bit easier to get the enemy's Fireball out. And if you bait out their Fireball using a different card, like let's just say Minion Horde, you can use the Barbarians to absolutely shred tanks and any other ground troops. 2, the Barbarians have a high damage per second. In fact, it was the troop that had the highest DPS out of all tank busters. excluding Inferno Tower and Inferno Dragon, of course. But now with that 5th Barbarian, the DPS of that card is now 565. To make things more clear, the Pekka has a DPS of 376. However, this card is still pretty fragile, and if the enemy has a cycle deck, they could just cycle back to another fireball to get rid of the other fireball bait troops. Overall, I would place them in the C tier, but that's better than before the buff, otherwise they'd be down in the D tier. Hunter. This card has much more potential than what most people think. The main reason why most people don't like using it is because of its low health, but in actuality, it has the same exact health as a Mega Minion. However, to be fair, that health is only impressive when you can't fireball it. Otherwise, things like support cards behind win conditions can just take it out. But luckily, you can just throw a mini tank right in the support card's face, and you could just have your hunter unharmed, chipping away at that tank. Also, its slow attack speed isn't really that big of a deal either, unless you want to kill off a hog flawlessly like a mini Pekka would. Otherwise, you would have to use an Ice Spirit. And that's especially when this card for only 4 elixir does more damage per hit than a Pekka. And you gotta remember that it targets air troops too. Wait, there's more. Plus, it can wipe away swarms with its 10 bullets. And that also goes for air troops. Sorry, Minion Horde. Oh no, it's a troop that's able to handle a lot of situations for just 4 elixir. For the trade-off of its health, I would definitely place it in the A tier. Lumberjack. This card is the only reason why you see the rage spell being used in pro player games. The only downside to this card is that it can't one-shot fireballies, such as the Wizard, Musketeer, 3 Musketeers, Ice Wizard, but even then, that's somewhat situational. Other than that, this card is full of positives. Great DPS, fast hit speed so it can deal with swarm cards, good health, good elixir cost, and the Bottle of Rage at the end boosts your push's attack power. And if you're using a Lumberjack on defense and the rage spell happens to hit your tower and your defending troops, you just boosted your defense. I would definitely place it in the S tier. Night Witch. Let me just say that she's a hybrid of a support card and a tank buster. Her DPS is okay, but the fact that she builds up bats over time increases her damage, which makes her good at killing these troops fairly alright. However, this does become problematic when you consider the splash damagers and splash spells that are in the meta. And those spells especially, if you've built up a good amount of bats over time, or you're at least trying to, those spells can just wipe them all away and you basically have to restart. And who knows what their tank is doing to your tower by then. However, to be fair, the troop and her bats are good at clearing away threats and counter pushing if you please. And the Night Witch and bats work even better on non-solid win conditions such as Hog Riders, Ram Riders, Battle Rams, and etc. Overall, I would place it in the C tier. Barbarian Hut. It's the most tanky building in the game, not to mention the high damage dealing barbarians that start to come out of it. However, the high cost, which becomes problematic when you're trying to kill non-tank win conditions such as Hog Riders, combined with the fact that Baby Dragon, Dark Prince, Mega Minion, Princess, and etc. meta, really weakens those stacked barbarians. Plus, the Princess buff doesn't help it either, and if 3 Musketeers become meta, and which as a result, Earthquake becomes meta, that's not going to help the Barbarian Hut. But even then, most spells don't have any significant impact on it, other than high damage spells such as the Lightning or the Rocket. So overall, I would place it in the D tier. The Inferno Tower for a cheaper cost just gets the job done much better. Royal Recruits. They're a hybrid of a swarm card and a tank buster. While they could be useful for taking out support troops behind win conditions and then having those recruits go and attack the tank or other win conditions such as Hog Riders, etc. Their high cost, slow movement speed, and the fact that they're pretty easy to counter, especially with a lot of splash damagers that I've already mentioned being meta, makes them very underwhelming. There is a trick where if the enemy places their tank in the pocket between the King Tower and your Princess Tower, you can drop your Royal Recruits there and they'll all swarm up. All 6 of them will swarm up on that tank. But even then, that's pretty situational. Overall, I would place it in the D tier. Elite Barbarians. Unfortunately, these guys aren't great tank busters for 2 reasons. 1, they're too expensive, at least compared to the other tank busters in this list that can get the job done much better. And 2, even when they're finished killing a tank and they go to counter push, they're usually pretty easy to counter. And this whole list is in terms of being in equal level terms, such as grand challenges or the top 200. When they get reworked, I'm sure I'm going to put them higher on the list, but for now I'm going to place them in the D tier. Remember, I'm sure that most of you who use this card get many wins. I'm just talking about how good they are in competitive play. Sparky. Like the Night Witch, she's also a hybrid between a support card and a tank buster. She's actually not bad, not only as a tank buster, but as a full push destroyer, especially when you use her with Tornado. On defense, she only has 2 counters, which is Lightning and Zap. Zapping a Sparky essentially doubles her hit speed time, which is a pretty heavy blow. But even if they use their Zap, Sparky is usually found in bait decks, such as the ones with Goblin Giant. However, Lightning is starting to increase in usage rate and win rates, which is going to definitely be deadly for Sparky. Other than that, in terms of counter pushing, she can't do too well, especially if she had already been hit by a lightning bolt. Electro Wizard, Dark Prince, Bats, etc. can take care of her pretty well once she's crossed the bridge. But even then, she's still a pretty nice tank buster. All in all, I would place her in the B tier. And finally, Pekka. I'm sure we all know where she ranks. High damage per hit, high DPS, and a ton of health. In fact, Pekka has the 2nd highest health in the game, right behind Golem. Plus, not only can she have the ability to tank out the biggest and toughest tanks in the game, such as the Golems, but her heavy armor can absorb all the damage from support troops, and she could just walk right over there and kill the support troops. And when she's still alive, you can counter push with her, and that's with her absorbing crown tower damage. For 7 elixir, that's worth it. If you have a good amount of elixir and you're trying to get your Pekka on the map and attacking as much as possible, you could even use her on other solid win conditions like Hog Riders, Ram Riders, Battle Ram, and etc., and then counter push with her afterwards. And that would be even better because usually when she faces troops like those, she's still at full health afterwards. It's a great tank buster to have pocketed in your deck if you need to deal with anything remotely having high health. I would definitely place her in the S tier. Thanks so much for watching this video. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments section which one and why. If you enjoy these tier list videos, let me know. These are really fun to make. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all next time.